Operating from a position of power and not scarcity is the hardest thing I think to overcome, and which is why, I really admire, looking up to you and how you operate sometimes in a position of power.
So I have plenty of experience around anxiety, and so I haven't met your fiance, but here's what I want to say to both of you in a way is if I could put words into your fiance's, tell me her name.
Anissa. Anissa.
Anissa is Anissa. First of all, anxiety is neither good nor bad. It's an emotion. It's a survival emotion. It's very powerful. So what I'd want to do is modulate her language, not to say, and ultimately your language is not to say you have too much anxiety or you're just too anxious the whole time. It's like, wow, you have a really powerful, you're deeply connected to the emotion of anxiety. And that's a really valuable emotion to have. Let's see how we can use that effectively. Let's see how you can use that effectively. Let's have a conversation. It's a fun dinner conversation. When has your anxiety helped you? I'm no doubt that it's been extraordinarily helpful in all sorts of things. It's got you where you are in a way. Let's see where it's not been helpful. And so let's try and understand when you should lean into your anxiety and actually amplify it, and when actually you want to kind of tone it down, and and it's sort of like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Let me double check. Hey, Anissa, do you think there's a time when I need to turn the volume up on this or tone it down? So it becomes a much more nuanced conversation. Than I'll give you an example from. This is so I had a business partner and my wife is deeply suspicious of her. So I could have said to my wife, "Oh, you're just very suspicious. You're too suspicious," in a way, to analogize. And I said something different. I said, I know that there's no person who loves me more, and that you want to protect me, and obviously you want to protect our family, and you don't want to see this come into a negative place. I'm deeply grateful for that, and I know that the emotion that you're feeling is valuable. And so now I want to find a way, we need to find a way to make it useful to us. We need to find a way, so in some cases, the suspicion might be, actually, you have a great point, I should structure this business relationship differently. Other cases might be, you're suspicious, and I think that the conclusion is that this person is the wrong person to deal with in my life. So do you see how there's a kind of, if you say, oh, you're just a suspicious bastard, that becomes the inner voice that is just like, is not productive. And it's fascinating how a modulation of how you talk about it can change whether the emotion. So this is all, Gadsad evolutionary psychology, and there's a book. It's like a name like Panksepp. And it's called The Archaeology of Emotions. And so we evolved as, Lucy at Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania was 2 million years ago. She was walking on 2 feet. So we've been bipedal for 2 million years. By contrast, we've had writing, I think, for less than 10,000 years. Even before we see animals have emotions, dogs have emotions. But certainly Lucy 2 million years ago had some kind of emotions. Over 2 million years, those emotions have been evolving. Those emotions are, they helped us to survive. They are deeply embedded within us, and the minute we're dismissing them, you are too ... You're too suspicious, you're too anxious for this. We're taking all the stuff that evolved that emotion and throwing out the window. And so in the last 10,000 years, and especially in the last 200 years, the world that humans have operated in is like changed so quickly that all of that human evolution can't keep up with it. So what happens now is somebody comes up with the emotion of suspicion, which is a highly evolved emotion that evolved over 2 million years. What's in the trees over there? Is it a wild animal? Could it kill me? Is it a competing tribe? Are they friend or foe? You get the feeling, this feeling in the gut. So over the 2 million years, if we were still in our hunter-gatherer state, those emotions would be accurate to what is going on in the rustling of the leaves, or whatever the hell else, if we talk about suspicion. Then we go into this unbelievably complex world that we live in with writing and all the stuff that we have, social media, and not in all cases can we trust the emotion. There are people who don't trust their emotions at all. There are people who live in their emotions. But if you say something like, you're too suspicious, or you're too anxious, you're cutting that connection between 2 million years of evolution, and you're cutting the informational content of that. And it's very, very hard to translate the informational or the survival content of that into practical action today. And, if I'm faced with a wild beast, it's possible that yelling at the top of my voice because I feel threatened and shaking my hands and jumping up and down is exactly what I need to do to protect myself and my family. But if a guy just bumped into me in the traffic behind and comes out at me and makes threatening noises, for me to jump out and start yelling at him in that way would be, potentially they might be road rage gun, they might shoot me. So the one, it's very obvious that it probably works and it's the right thing to do. And the second, so we have to kind of like switch on other modules which allow us to make that translation, but never lose the profound and powerful informational content of those emotions. So if it's my wife suspicious, I'm a less suspicious person. To say, oh my God, that is really interesting. Let's try and understand what's going on. Now, obviously, that requires my wife to have an open mind and say, she's not like, well, you're just a suspicious bastard. It's like, okay, let's try and, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm seeing. Did you see the way they ... Did you see that they're not responding? And it goes the other way. I'm an anxious bastard. And I'm like, oh my God, I sent him an email and he didn't respond, instead of you're always anxious, it's like, well, how many days did you give it? I sent it 2 hours ago. Well, you just remember you don't respond to emails sometimes for 48 hours or more. So, okay, I can calm myself. Emotions are a guide to action. It never serves us to deny our emotions. So, Rumi, the Rumi poem. So Rumi lived in what is now, I believe, present-day Iran, Persian poet, beautiful soul, read a lot in English, so there's a translation, but every human being is a guest house, every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And so, when we're talking, I didn't interrupt the poem.
That was very powerful.
Yeah, you
Wow.
never, it's so like anxiety. If I had Anissa here, like, just invite anxiety and say, hello, anxiety. Would you like to sit down and have a cup of tea? Tell me what's going on with you. You know, tell me what you're seeing. You don't have to be the anxiety, you know? And so that's a powerful, powerful idea.
Yeah, the inner voice. That was very powerful. Thank you. I am gonna do therapy sessions with myself
Yeah.
in that manner. Because yeah, it is very powerful. And even back to the inner voice, something that actually really aligned with the question I wanted to segue to is you said, appreciating the fact that you can say, I'm the man. This is amazing, but at the same time, this I really sucked in this aspect, and having that duality and respect both. Uh, I heard someone say that the three traits of all successful people, morning routines didn't matter. None of it actually mattered. There were only three traits, and the one was you felt like you could conquer the world, but you never felt good enough to achieve it. So you delayed gratification in hopes of achieving it.
Yeah.
And I want to get your thoughts on balancing that, because I mean that is, from when I look at like all successful people, there is that torture and that beauty in that, and that doesn't necessarily lead to happiness though. It leads to success but maybe not happiness. So I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Well, what I heard you say, and I'm not sure if this is addressing exactly what, but I think it's valid and relevant. And then if I didn't address it, you can come back and re-ask the question a different way. Is so the first word that came to my mind was chutzpah, which is a Jewish origin word, which is kind of the brazenness to Edmund Hillary, the brazenness to think that he can climb Mount Everest. Ernest Shackleton, the brazenness to think that he can reach the Antarctic. But that's combined with the humility or anxiety, or what, the fear of failure, the concern about the downside, and it's when those two things come together, and the one doesn't, the brazenness is not lost, but neither is the fear of taking care of the downside. That when those two things come together, that's when you get some kind of really powerful results in life, and leads to satisfying outcomes, success, potentially big success, but satisfying success. And if you just concerned about the downside, you'll never take those big steps. But if you only take those big steps with the brazenness, then you could get yourself into some serious trouble. So how do you inculcate? Well, I guess one is to diagnose which one is. And I think that we've all met the big rollers who lead to ruin, Jesse Livermore. And we know plenty of people who go and do things like work as librarians or work as civil servants or all sorts of jobs where there ain't much upside, but there ain't much downside. And I think that's fine. I mean, Philip Larkin, a famous poet, worked as a librarian, I believe, as I think did T.S. Eliot, although I may be mistaken there. And I think they lived really happy lives because their real goal in life was to create great poetry, which they did. As you can see, I'm a kind of a big fan of, not a big fan, but I do love poetry. I've met people, we all will meet people where they they really regret not taking more risk. They lived too much on that side. I think my answer I actually think it's easier to convert from somebody who's extremely risk averse, somebody who takes a little bit more risk in life and creates more possibilities for upsiders, because my word to them is, you don't have to convert from being a hermit living in a very protected environment to going skydiving. Do a small thing, take a small step. Like I said, do a small step. That's okay. If you have that inner voice that says that's ridiculous, don't compare yourself to, it's okay to climb the hill to my home. I don't have to be Sir Edmund Hillary climbing Everest. Maybe one day I'll get to Everest, but the first thing I can do is I can walk up the hill. I can walk 5 steps, I can take a flight of steps. Something like that. That's actually a better place, and that's easier to work on because your downside in a way is protected through your personality than the other side, which is people who just can't stop themselves from taking big, humongous flying risks on things and live extraordinary highs when it works out, but are in extraordinary pain when it doesn't. Did that address?
Yeah. Yeah, finding that balance. I'm curious if there's a trait that you would add into the mix of. So there were the three successful traits, but what is a trait that you think is missing in that equation that that person came up with?
So the three traits are?
You feel like you can conquer the world, or it's yours for the taking, so a bit of ego, but you never feel good enough to achieve it. The humbleness or the insecurity, but you're willing to delay gratification in hopes of actually achieving it.
Do you know who wrote that?
I don't. I know who said it, but he never gave up who actually wrote it. A guy named Alex Hermosi on YouTube said that in a podcast, and that was really profound hearing that.
I think that's something that it's a question that I didn't ask myself because I had high anxiety probably, and my life would have been very different if I'd asked this question and taken it seriously. And this is, again, I'm like you, I don't remember the person who asked it first or who I can attribute it to, but what would you do if there was no doubt that you would succeed? What would you dedicate your life to if there's no doubt you would succeed at doing it? And so I can say for me, I came at investing, I think, if I try and understand myself, for partly being an immigrant, partly a family history that I've written about in my annual report of fleeing for reasons of persecution, religious or otherwise. Security was everything, the most important thing. Don't even start to think about all that other stuff until you've found that security. And security, in the way I saw the world, was primarily financial security, period. But I think that question is a wonderful question. So if I had asked myself the question, if you could achieve anything, what would you set your mind to? I might have sought to become a politician, might have sought to become a kind of world-renowned professor maybe. I don't think I would have sought to become I just finished a book by Salman Rushdie, Knife. I don't think I would have sought to become an author of, what is his genre called? It's called magical realism. It's a kind of a wonderful name. 100 Years of Solitude is also considered to be magical realism. Both wonderful, Satanic Verses, what I'm reading right now, which I feel obliged to read. I don't feel obliged to read it. I found my way into the book, and it's not the only one I'm reading, but Salman Rushdie is one of the greatest men walking alive today, given what he's gone through, and he's got my enormous respect and gratitude. But I will never meet him, and I didn't know much about him until recently, but the poor guy was stabbed 18 times over 27 seconds in Chappaqua, New York. Chautauqua, sorry. In any case, I just went off on a tangent there. I think that, you climb a mountain by taking the first step. So just like take the first step.
Taking the first step I think is always the hardest, right?
I think what I come back at you with is I don't want to talk about qualities because that's not something that's under my control.
Right.
And I want to talk about things that are under my control, and I can't just like create the quality of, arrogance or, those other qualities that you talked about. What I can do is take an action. So funny enough, we talked about the physical environment shaping our ability to make good decisions. Taking an action shapes your soul. So I've started doing something with my family, with my wife, but my extended family. I learned it from Chantal here. So when my wife leaves on a journey or goes off to the airport in the taxi, I stand at the gate and I salute her. And it's really fascinating. It says, "You're really important to me. And my family is really important to me. And I salute you because if you're leaving, then I'm going to stand and give that mark of respect." So on the one hand, it's just a stupid salute. Shapes your soul, shapes who I am, shapes the actions that I subsequently take. And so I'm more interested in what actions can I take that will shape my soul, that will shape my, and maybe shaping my soul is a bit much, but I think it does ultimately shape your soul. Again, Warren's got all the wisdom, but this actually doesn't originate with Warren. There's a beautiful set of, watch your actions because they become deeds, watch your deeds because they become habits, watch your habits because they become character, watch your character because it becomes destiny. So, this is a theme that this action, how's it going to, ultimately that's destiny. The book by the famous US general who said, making your bed in the morning is destiny. Why? You make your bed, you've achieved something, you feel you've accomplished, you feel a sense of mastery, so what actions can I take that ultimately will affect my destiny? And actually, amazing enough, standing there and saluting my wife ultimately becomes destiny. It's just kind of nuts. It's those small actions, just incredible. Small actions taken repeatedly. The bonds of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. Something like that is, I think, what Warren said. It's everything.